from Arkansas's #1 trusted source for weather. This is a new podcast episode alert.
Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast here. Normally it would be me and Derek. Derek is kind of sick at the moment, so you guys are going to get a little bit of a history of, me and how I started with Arkansas Weather Watchers and everything like that, because, I get this a lot whenever I'm doing these live streams or I'm doing a forecast and everything like that, or even I'll just get like a message or something like that where everyone is like, how did you get started with Arkansas Weather Watchers? How was it born? And everything like that here. And we talked about this in kind of a different podcast episode, but this is kind of more of a personal aspect on, how AWW has kind of made me into the forecaster that you guys see on a daily basis. So I started in El Dorado. I was born and raised in El Dorado, and during that point, I remember when I was 6, 7 years old, I would always go to my grandpa's house, and he would always catch me looking at the sky. He would always be like, "Hey, what's going on today? What do you think is going to happen?" and everything like that. And I have always had that interest in weather. I mean, this has stemmed all the way from basically, like I said, basically the time I was a kid. So that has always been with me, and it will always continue to be a part of my life. And the older I got, the better my interest in weather got. And this is something that you guys haven't heard since I've been Arkansas Weather Watchers. But one of my old science teachers, Miss Davis, I would never forget that science class I had with her. She was talking about the weather one day, and she was going over a lesson, and she noticed how I was answering all the weather questions correctly. And she's like, "Oh, hey, we may have a future meteorologist in here." And that really just kind of propelled my interest for weather and making it a part of my life. So as time went on, I got in high school. I started to get more and more and more and more interested in weather. I started doing social media stuff with the weather as well. And then Derek reached out to me after the Valonia, Arkansas tornado. And during that point was kind of like the turning point of my life. Everybody has those moments where, something happens and it's just a turning point. And that's what happened. I started Arkansas Weather Watchers with him and everything like that. And during that point, personally, I have had a lot of ups and downs. Nobody's perfect, especially whenever you're in this field or any kind of major field. You're going to have times where you are doing absolutely perfect. You're going to have times where you're not doing so perfect. And I've had those times, especially just kind of learning the ropes with the weather, how the weather is working, how Arkansas weather is, and everything like that. And there was a couple of events that I've had back in 2014, 2015 that kind of molded me into the forecaster I am today. Back then, I just do the basics. I didn't know about, model data or, all this stuff that you guys hear me talk about on a daily basis on the page. So a lot of that goes to Derek and Jim, but some of that actually was just self-taught, and for me, in a way, that's the biggest thing that I've been able to kind of learn the best is, yes, I've had someone teach me. Yes, I've had someone, always be there and, guide me into the right direction. But it's been a lot of self-teaching. That's the biggest thing with me is I've been able to see something once and immediately adapt to it. So that's kind of how I got my roots as a Arkansas forecaster. And throughout the years, I've learned more and more and more. And, some of the downfalls that I've had, is having those forecast busts, having those setbacks. And a lot of people will tell you this in life. When you have those setbacks, it will either make you a better person or it will stop you in those tracks. And I've always kind of seen failure as, hey, this gives me another opportunity to learn from my mistakes and make myself into the best version possible. And that's the biggest thing with me is I'm always going to make myself into the best version of Cameron Barnes that you see on a daily basis on the page. So that's one of the biggest things. And I've heard around, the weather community and stuff like that, when you have one of those forecast busts, and this happens a lot during the winter time more than, just spring or anything like that. You have one of those systems that comes in and it looks great in terms of snowfall. And then what ends up happening is, the forecast ends up busting. You don't get a lot or anything like that. And, you hear about it, or even if you don't hear about it, that subconscious that subconscious thought in your mind, you're like, man, I should have seen this coming. I should have seen that coming and everything like that. So that's where I have learned to be a forecaster. That's why I've learned, it's not always peaches and rainbows or anything like that. You're not always going to nail a forecast 100%. You're always going to have those setbacks. And another thing is, I've had a lot of people kind of intrigued on, how am I so natural whenever I'm doing live streams and whenever I'm doing severe weather coverage, or I'm not like, freaking out or, anything like that. This goes back to my grandpa. My grandpa taught me a lot about self-control and just kind of teaching myself about my own tone. Whenever you're communicating to the public and everything like that, especially during those crucial moments, I'm talking like, the severe weather outbreaks, the tornado outbreaks and stuff like that. You're communicating to people that are either dealing with storm anxiety or trying to figure out, what's the best course of action for their family and their loved ones and everything like that. So my tone has always been serious, but not panicking. I've always had that calm nature about myself, and I struggled with that at first whenever I was doing these live streams, especially by myself, is because we would have one of these big moments and we'd have multiple warnings, and it's, it gets a little hard to not get overwhelmed by all of those warnings and all the reports and everything like that. And as time grew, I just got myself better and better and better and better at it. And that's the biggest thing, is just teaching yourself about your tone and communicating to people and everything like that. So I've had a lot of people come up to me and be like, hey, I like listening to you whenever you do coverage or anything like that. I like listening to you and Derek whenever you do coverage. And he's one of those reasons why, I've kind of maintained that tone, the degree of the tone you have whenever you're communicating that stuff, is just because you're communicating to people that are already in that mode, and you don't want to add to it. You want them to be safe, but you don't want to add to, their feeling of anxiety or anything like that. You want to bring it down to a level, because I've always known this, and this is a quote that I will always stand by, is if you're going into something, it could be a game, it could be anything, a competition or anything like that. If you go in it with a calm mind, you will always win the day. If you go in it to an anxiety mind, you will always make mistakes. And that's the quote that I tell myself every single time we have those tornado warnings, those tornado warning coverage, or those big severe weather days or something like that. Calm your mind, focus on the task, and you'll be good. And that's the biggest thing with me, is I've always been able to do that. And also, just kind of throwing it back to, a little bit more about me, is I will always make sure that Arkansas is covered no matter what the cost is. Making sure that Arkansas is prepared, ready to go. I've had a lot of people kind of, talk to me about what happened during the Little Rock tornado and everything like that. I want to personally say, that I was perfectly fine during that moment. And I've had a lot of people also say, how do you not get scared in those moments when you have, an incoming tornado coming your way? And that if you don't get to shelter, it could cost you your life. And the biggest thing with me is, one, I was safe during that period. So I'm always aware of my surroundings. And then two, I will always make sure that Arkansas lives are protected no matter what. I stayed live during the entire time. My safety was fine, but as long as I had internet, as long as I had a way for people to hear my voice, they were protected, and that makes me feel better as not only just a forecaster or just a guy on Arkansas Weather Watchers, but just as a human being, as a person with a good conscience on their head. Like, hey, I gave it my all, I gave it everything I had, and I made sure that they were safe. So that's what I will always do. I will always have that in my mind. Whenever we're doing these big coverages or anything like that, it's just making sure that Arkansas is protected there. So the majority about that, like I said before, that's just kind of a little bit about me and everything like that. I've had a lot of people kind of contact me and say, hey, how did you come by with everything and everything like that? So I just want to kind of talk to you guys about that today. Also, one more thing is I'm very excited about the future coming up with Arkansas Weather Watchers. I'm very excited for, the mountain that we continue to climb, not only for myself, but for my team as well. I'm very excited about the future and very excited about the projects that we have coming up at this point. So the next episode that we're going to have, guys, is going to be about the Rolling Fork tornado. I really do appreciate you guys for tuning into this podcast, and also appreciate everybody that has kind of reached out and saying, hey, I really like your forecasting. I like your live streams. I really do appreciate you guys. I really do. I would not be here doing this on a daily basis if it wasn't for you guys' support. So thank you guys so much. As always, I do really appreciate y'all for coming to me and everything like that. But please be aware that it's not just me here. I got an entire team that has my back, and as long as that team has my back, I'm gonna bust my behind for Arkansas Weather Watchers, and I'm gonna make it the best possible weather service on the planet, and I'm gonna make myself the best version of Cameron that you guys know. And as always, I really do appreciate our Patreon supporters. That's gonna be Gina James, Jessica Page, Elijah, one of my favorite guys, Elijah. He's always commenting on our stuff, and he's been on the page he's been commenting on the page and interacting for a while. Pam Webb, she's one of my great friends. Gina Gardner, Shauna Milligan, and also Lisa Snow, and also the rest of our Patreon supporters. I just kind of want to say this, for Patreon, I really do appreciate you guys for becoming Patreon supporters. If you would like to become one, it's very cheap, and I promise you're going to like the reward that you get with it. Especially if you become a $5.99 tier. $3.99 tier still gets the same thing, but $5.99 you get a whole lot more. And also, kind of want to throw a little bit of a shout out to our sponsors over at Local Roofing and Construction. Those boys have been busy over the last couple of days with the back for severe weather here in the Natural State. Also, Crown Round Ranch and also Natural State Wireless. Natural State Wireless does a really great job of powering us through severe weather. And also the BBB here in Arkansas, that's the Better Business Bureau as well. So like I mentioned before, I love each and every single one of you guys. Thank you guys for the overwhelming support. Arkansas Weather Watchers is going to be here. We're here for the long haul, and we're going to continue to keep you guys updated right here, your source for all things Arkansas weather.